You know what this is giving me flashbacks of?
What's that?
When we would do the podcast and you didn't have a quick tip ready. And you would say, today's quick tip is brought to you by David Greene. And in that moment, I would have to think of a quick tip.
You never missed it though, man. You got it every time.
Well, after the first couple, I started to expect it. So when you were talking, I was thinking of what my quick tip would be. And then sometimes if you just start talking, it's what's that Michael Scott saying? And sometimes I start a sentence and hope I find where it's going along the way.
Is that what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like, how do you invest in 20% down real estate?
Hey everybody, you guys have a good time? Anybody losing their voice? Yeah, all right. I don't mind that, right? I'm gonna go hard tonight. I'm gonna lose it all entirely, and tomorrow I'll be sounding like Matt Buck. Anybody heard Matt Buck today? Matt Buck, COO of BetterLife, sounds like a 3-year-old. It's great. All right, so we're gonna do a little segment here, a new segment. I'm actually gonna film this, and we'll probably put this out as a podcast. It'll be a quick podcast. We don't have a ton of time, but I want to do a little segment here called "How Do I?" How do I? Now earlier, I opened this entire event with the idea of it's more important that you decide than what you decide. We talked about that in my keynote, and I challenged everybody here to say, hey, by the time I leave this event, when I leave this event, I'm gonna know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna know my path going forward. How many of you, and it's okay, be honest, you don't have to say yes here, but how many of you feel like 90% sure or more of what the next year looks like for your real estate? You feel pretty confident. All right, that's good, that's good. And for those who don't have that, you have till midnight or else you're lying to me. So you have till midnight to figure it out. I want you to just make a decision. You don't have to stick with it forever, but make a decision. So this is why I want to do this segment called How Do I? Anybody read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad? All right, so are we touching shoes? Are your feet bigger than mine? What size feet do you have?
Whatever yours are, they're that size bigger.
Jeez, you're Goliath over here. All right, so in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the lines that's most famous that I changed my life, it's changed many people, is he says, wealthy people don't ask, can I afford it? They ask, how? How do I afford it? So rather than saying, what should I invest in, or should I BRRRR, or how, like, can I BRRRR? Can I house hack? We're gonna do a segment here where I'm gonna be interviewing David here. And I'm gonna ask him, how do I? I'm gonna give him a whole list of different strategies and tactics, because there is a way to do everything if you do it right. There's ways to reduce your risk, there's ways to make it happen. Does that sound good? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go about a minute or so each one. I'm gonna throw them at you, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, maybe I'll just move right on. But we're gonna start with, how do I? Some of these might be hard, by the way, because it might be like, I don't know how to do that. We're gonna find out. How do I invest in traditional, conventional, 20% down rental houses? In this market, how do I make that work?
You know what this is giving me flashbacks of?
What's that?
When we would do the podcast and you didn't have a quick tip ready. And you would say, today's quick tip is brought to you by David Greene. And in that moment, I would have to think of a quick tip.
You never missed it though, man. You got it every time.
Well, after the first couple, I started to expect it. So when you were talking, I was thinking of what my quick tip would be. And then sometimes if you just start talking, it's what's that Michael Scott saying? And sometimes I start a sentence and hope I find where it's going along the way.
Is that what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like, how do you invest in 20% down real estate? I think you said something when we used to record the podcast, maybe it was even before I was there, that I started saying all the time as if I came up with it. And it was that in today's market, you don't find great deals, you make great deals. And I think really in any healthy real estate market, that's true. I don't think you should ever be able to just find great deals. We were able to find great deals post 2010 because nobody wanted to invest in real estate. Okay, it was like, you want to go to a seafood buffet, everybody else is puking from the oysters that they just ate. So it wasn't hard, there was no line for it. And we had this embarrassment of riches. It was like, do I want a 20% return, a 25% return? Or, ooh, I looked hard enough and I got a 32% return. And what's funny is at that time, there were still people afraid to invest in real estate. Remember how hard we had to convince people? Why? But what if I lose my money? And you're like, oh. It could become half of what it's worth. It's still making $700 a month more. So that was a unique situation that many of us are kicking ourselves like, why didn't I buy more? It's always going to be the case. I think you have to make the deal make sense in today's market. I think you need to be looking for something that other investors are missing or other investors are not willing to take on. So the last couple years when I was buying, I wasn't even looking at a standard 3-2 that didn't have any way to adjust the floor plan or the size of the property. I literally was going to add value, not just by doing cosmetic rehab, but by making it twice as big. Right? So like I have a property in Castro Valley, California, which is a market that most of the time you could not find anything for less than $1 million, like really good area. And I found an 1,100 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom property, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom property that had a 3rd bedroom in the basement that had been converted, but the basement itself was just like dirt and frame, right? So that property had a unique floor plan to where it was sitting on a very high basement and it had a 2-car garage at the floor level. So to get to the house, you'd have to walk upstairs to go into your front door. Well, when I walked it, I was like, oh my, I could make the house more than twice as big converting this basement. And this is very expensive real estate. Well, nobody else even looked at the house because it was a 2-1 that was priced for like $900,000. And I'm like, that's the only thing under $1 million in the whole city. So long story short, I bought a house that nobody else would even look at, converted the 2-car garage and that basement into all livable space, made the house twice as big, then converted the sunroom that was on the back of it to like a studio unit. And I ended up with a 3-unit property that was about 2.5 times as big as what I originally bought. And it cash flowed pretty easily, and the value of it went way higher. And it was sitting on the MLS for 50, 60 days that nobody else, you want to look at it, because they were all trying to find the deal instead of make the deal.
Brilliant, man. To expand on that, a lot of you guys have heard, this week there's some sponsors here about like, the pad split, right? Like the idea of splitting it up, or the rent by the room stuff, or sober living. Those things are also good opportunities. I mean, I can imagine you found that 20% down house. That doesn't make any sense. At 7%, 20% down, you just break even, probably lose a little money on cash flow if you put a traditional rental. But the thing had 4 bedrooms, and it's got the sunroom. It becomes a 5th bedroom. And now you rent them all out for $1,200 a month each room, and you're renting it by the room. All of a sudden now that 20% down, traditional, conventional, rental house, you found a way to make it into a deal. Rather than just looking at it one-dimensional, it's looking at it from different ways. That's why I love events like this, by the way, where you hear a bunch of different ideas. And that's why whenever we host an event at Better Life, I tell Tarl to pack the sponsor area. That's not to make money. I mean, yeah, they pay us to be here, but it's because these are legit different ways to invest in real estate. They're just companies that can help you and they make money off it. But I want as many sponsors I can possibly fill in because they actually teach you things about how to do different strategies. So the more you know, it's like tools in a toolbox. I use that analogy a lot. I'm the analogy guy. I don't know if you know that. David's really bad at them, but I'm great at them. So tools in a toolbox. The more tools you have, the more projects you can take on.
And contractors are people that are willing to fix things that a normal person isn't. Tools are something that you need to fix a problem. That's what they exist for. That deal that you just described is only available because the other investors don't want it because it's more work.
Yeah, it's true.
It is. It's more work. So if you want to make the money, you should be looking for what kind of work am I willing to do that other people are not willing to do, instead of what property am I going to find that I just keep analyzing them over and over and over and hoping that I just stumble into the one that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of coaching, but if I ever sit down and coach people, I always ask them what is going to be your hard? Like you have to have a hard, like in real estate. You have to choose a thing, right? You have to pick what's your hard thing. I'm gonna be like, my hard thing with mobile home parks is we buy them 70% full and we fill them up. It's incredibly hard to get pads prepped, find homes, move them in, sell them. I've got like 8 people on staff that have to just do that one piece of it. It's incredibly difficult, but we're world class at it now. And therefore we get deals that nobody else gets because we chose our hard. Your hard could be septic tanks. Your hard could be, foundation problems. Could be, splitting it up and renting it by the bedroom. That sounds awful to rent out by the bedroom. Oh, that's hard. Good, as Jocko would say. All right, good. Next one, BRRRR. How do we BRRRR in today's market?
You look for ways to make a property bigger. All of your competition is looking for ways to make it better. Really, there's 2 ways you make a property worth more. You make it bigger, you make it better. You improve the cosmetic condition and bring it up to where comps are, you can make it worth more, or you make it bigger. Well, everybody else is looking at deals where they're like, ooh, I just want something with an outdated kitchen and an outdated bathroom. But are they looking to where they can add a bathroom? Are you looking at a deal understanding that a raised foundation makes it easier to run plumbing underneath the house to where you can add a bathroom, where if you have a slab foundation, it's incredibly hard to drill into the foundation to be able to run the plumbing? Do you have what I call real estate goggles? that you can look at a house and be like, oh my gosh, like there's a perfect place to put a bathroom right behind this wall where there's already plumbing. Brandon's nodding because he understands this. He has a little bit of a background in construction. If you don't have goggles to look at a house and see how you could edit its floor plan, you're not going to see opportunity that someone like you and I might look at right away.
How does somebody get the goggles?
You look at the deals other people did and you ask them questions about like, what are they seeing? Right? And this is something I think is good advice for everything in life. When you're around someone who's really good at something, master class, I'm always asking questions to try to get like, let me get in your head. I want to see the world from your eyes. Like I was hanging out with Brandon yesterday and he said, do you want to play a video game? And I said, yeah, my feet really hurt. Maybe Mario Kart. And he goes, no, let's play Dance Dance Revolution. It'll be way better on Instagram. It's like, I don't even think about what would be good on Instagram. It never crosses my mind. But when I'm around Brandon, it's like getting this view from a place that I never look at. And every time I'm like, this guy is so smart. I never think about it like that. But it's really good to be around people like that. So that's part of it. And part of it is like when I was a real estate investor, I was always wanting to know, how does an appraiser look at a property? How does a home inspector look at a property? What is a lender doing? Because when I became a real estate agent, I had to fix all the problems that those people caused, otherwise the deal wasn't going to close. So instead of just thinking like, I just want to do this, I really think that's where a lot of people get frustrated with life, is you have an expectation that you should only have to do this part and somebody else somewhere else should do the rest. I was a psychology major, and one of the things we learned was the definition of frustration is interference with a desired goal. It's very simple, but if you just think about every time in life you've been frustrated, you had a goal and something was getting in the way of it. Well, what if you just changed your goal? Instead of your goal being, I want passive income, I don't want to have to touch it. You accepted, yeah, if I'm going to make money in real estate, it's not going to be completely passive. So if it's going to be hard, what's the hard that I want to take on? The frustration evaporates. You have a happier life. You're seeing angles of deals that other people are missing.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. All right. Let me harp on BRRRR 1 second longer, a different angle of it. Not necessarily the property, the financing. How do you do financing today on BRRRR?
At the one brokerage, we have a BRRRR package that makes this super easy. So what I used to do is I would have to buy a property, put 20 to 25% down, and I had to pay the whole rehab cost, which is like, you could get stuck there. That's a lot of money that you're putting into it. And so then we would say, you got to borrow it from this person or take a second position lien and give this person a private note and use the money for the rehab. Well, now we have products where you can put 10% down on the acquisition and the rehab. So you could borrow the money for the rehab and the purchase and put 10% down on the whole thing. So you don't need that much money, right? And so then you do your BRRRR and then you refinance out of it into either a conventional loan or a DSCR loan, but whatever makes the most sense. But it's way easier than it ever was. And now we have loan products where we can get investment property HELOCs. So like there's a lot of ways to move energy from assets into other ones now. There's less places to move that energy to. Right? So like you just pick your heart. What do you want? Back in the day, there was tons of deals and there was nowhere to get money to buy them. But there was tons of contractors who would go to work for you, right? And then there was a point where there was no contractors, but there were still some deals and there was a little bit of money, but you couldn't get a contractor to do the work anymore. And now we've moved into the point where you've got still tough to get a contractor, but there's tons of money and there's no deals because everybody wants to be involved in it. So I think if you reach out to us, we can get you financing for these properties. Other people have similar products. It's easier than ever, I think, to get the money to do deals.
Awesome, man. Let's go house flipping next. How do we flip houses safely or as safe as possible in today's market?
House flipping might be safer than buy and hold right now. Buy and hold bailed out a lot of bad operators, bad execution, and bad deals because what I call natural equity, the next book I have coming out talks about all the different ways you make money in real estate. Natural equity is when the government prints a lot of money and everything becomes worth more money, including real estate. Yeah. We had so much of that you could really screw up and then you sold your house for $40,000 more than you thought you were going to sell it for. And so you would have lost 10, but you made 30, right? I think that that isn't happening to the same degree as what it was. So if you screw up on your buy and you're bleeding money, it's a lot harder to get out of it. But flipping, there's a lot of people that want to buy houses right now and not just investors. We tend to look at everything from this cash flow lens, but the majority of houses are bought by primary residence buyers. They're not bought by investors. So when you're flipping a house, it doesn't have to fit your matrix of what you're used to looking at things from an investor perspective. It just has to be a pretty house that somebody would want to live in, and there's still a ton of people looking to buy those.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's that, you guys probably saw the sponsor out there, Deal Flow. That's Cameron Cathcart's business, and I'm an advisor in it, which means I kind of help guide some decisions and some marketing around how to grow it. The reason I chose to do that, one, just because I love Cam and he's one of my best friends, but two, because I'm a big fan of flipping right now. Like, I actually think flipping is really good in this part of the market if you do it right and if you do it safely. And so the whole idea was like, here's how to scale up flipping. So anyway, if you're interested in more about that, obviously go talk to Cameron later. I'm a huge, huge fan of that strategy right now. Again, if you can do it right and if you can do it consistently. So yeah, I love flipping right now.
Great point.
Let's go house hacking. How do you house hack in this market? Is it different?
If you want a house hack, you're in the best position ever. I think house hacking is the best strategy for the market that we're in right now, because house hacking isn't just real estate investing. It's real estate investing combined with prudent financial stewardship. So if you can eliminate the cost of your rent, even if you're not living for free, but you're just cutting it in half, like if you were normally going to pay $3,000 in rent and now you're only paying $1,500, that is the equivalent of getting more than $1,500 in cash flow for 3% down. Do you know anywhere you can put 3% down on a house and get $1,500? Because even if you get $1,500 in cash flow, you're still going to pay some taxes on that. But if you save $1,500, that's even better. And I see people that are paying $4,200 in rent, and they're like, I can't find any deals that work. Like, you're the easiest person ever to find a deal that works. Like, buy in the best neighborhood in the best location that you can, get the biggest, ugliest house that you can possibly find, turn it into several different sections, live in one of them and rent out the other ones. And then when you're done in it, go do the same thing again and rent out the unit that you were living in. Like, you almost can't miss. And they're like, no, I want to get cash flow.
Yeah.
You call that the sneaky rental, and I stole that from you also.
Man, that's good.
Do you remember calling it that? You come up with so many good ideas, you don't even remember all
They just
of them.
flow out, man.
Yeah. You called it the sneaky rental because you can buy a primary residence.
No.
You could buy a primary residence for 3% down or 5% down and then turn it into a rental property. But that's incredibly powerful. If you just look at how many properties you can buy with 3% down versus 20, you can buy almost 7 times as much real estate if you just buy it as a primary residence instead of as a regular investment property. And I'd say for most people in this room, the majority of you, capital is your biggest constraint. Like, properties will still cash flow, just go put 50% down. Problem solved. You guys are welcome. Right? But that's the problem, is we don't have 50%. So how do you get there? Well, if you're house hacking, you're buying in the right areas, you're giving yourself a timeline of several years, you're building the equity. Now the equity that you've built becomes the down payment for the next property that you're going to buy.
What's funny, I was actually going to ask the next question was, and I don't know if you'll be able to address this as much as I can speak to it, but like large multifamily. How do we do large apartment complexes? And my answer was going to be, you put 50% down. Like, that's literally what we're doing. Maybe it's 50, maybe it's 45, but we're going, in order to make properties work today at interest rates where they are, we just got to raise a whole lot more money, and we got to put a whole lot more down, and then it works. Now the cash on cash return is a whole lot lower. When, obviously the more money you put down in a deal, typically the lower you're going to cash on cash return is. But that's the market we're in right now. So we're a little bit lower cash on cash return, which is actually why at Open Door Capital we decided, we're like, well, we're doing this value add apartments or mobile home parks, but we're putting so much down that the cash on cash return is only 2 or 3% the first year. People want they get 5% in a checking account. It's like, how do you compete with that? How do we raise money? So we're doing kind of like a hybrid on our newest fund, where we're doing like a private credit allocation, which is basically like funding some hard money loans, which are really, really good right now. Hard money is super high right now. So now we're getting cash flow from that mixed with equity long term from the multifamily.
Sounds like portfolio architecture.
It sounds like portfolio architecture. You're right, man. That's good. I did it without even knowing it. That's great. So yeah, we combine it together and now we get cash flow. So just being creative like that and thinking, how do I make, again, it's the how question. We sat down in a room with all these smart people at Open Door Capital, and that was the question, like we wrote on a whiteboard. How do we compete with 5% savings accounts? Like, how do we do that? How do we raise money in that environment? And we just figured it out. And you ask yourself the right questions, right? We talked about that in session 1 this weekend. Is like, powerful questions lead to powerful answers, and they lead to a powerful life. So that's multifamily. Wholesaling, like, how do we wholesale in today's market?
I mean, right now, I would say the biggest problem for most investors is finding a good deal. And so if you're doing the work of finding the good deal, I can't imagine it being super hard to offload properties to buyers. The challenge with wholesaling is probably going to be, because you can't guarantee that the values are just going to keep going up. Like, you could overpay on a property before and you really didn't overpay because it went up 10, 15% in the next 6 months. That isn't there to the point where if you didn't get a good deal on that property, it might be harder to go get rid of it. And so I think it's just like a grind. Like, you just got to be willing. I think I heard Henry say the other day, like, you got to be willing to do the work that nobody else wants to do. Speaking of Henry, I keep seeing him laughing, but I'm not telling a joke, and I want to know, like, who is so funny that you think you need to be laughing at that's not me?
Hi,
just
Henry.
kidding. Does it work when I pretend to be jealous? Did anybody buy that? Like, wholesaling to me is like, if you're going direct to seller and you're putting the reps in, it's really good practice. That's going to be in the future where the best deals, or maybe at some point the only deals. Like, I'm very nervous about the future of the MLS with all the changes that we're seeing with real estate agents and how much like the overall market has kind of turned against that traditional model. Because in my mind, if you want to get the most money for your property as a seller, you put it in front of the most eyeballs you can get. That's pretty obvious. But if you can get to a property and get someone to sell to you before everybody else sees it, the odds of you getting a good deal are exponentially higher.
Awesome. How about commercial? And when I say commercial, I'm kind of looping in a lot of things. There's retail, there's office, there's industrial. How do we make that kind of stuff work today?
You win, like with commercial properties, you win big or you lose big. It's very difficult. It's not like residential where you just kind of slow and steady are going to build equity. Yeah. So you saw people crush it in the last 5, 6, 7 years because cap rates compress so much. You know what, can we take a minute to explain cap rates to people? Because like, you guys are gonna leave here like that feeling when you first hit puberty and you grew a muscle and you were like, yes, like I can't believe it, I finally got it. So many people here are like that prepubescent boy that doesn't understand cap rates, and they're just like, I wish I understood what the hell these people were talking about. So let me give you guys a crash course on understanding what this actually means. A cap rate is, at its like most simple form, a metric that you would use to describe the cash-on-cash return you would get on a commercial asset if you bought it for cash. So if I just went and bought an apartment complex or a mobile home park and I bought it for all cash and I got a 6% cash-on-cash return, that would be a 6 cap. Now, people confuse it all the time with a cash-on-cash return in residential real estate, and they'll say, oh, I bought it at a 12 cap. They didn't. They're getting a 12% cash-on-cash return, and they don't realize what they're actually saying. It's like, it's the best way to make yourself look like a butthead when you're at a real estate meetup is to use cap rate metrics when you're talking about residential real estate. Like, I'll think of a good analogy of what I could compare that to in a little bit, but it's like a really good way to prove that you don't know what you're talking about. But it doesn't really matter because no one's buying commercial assets for cash. Cap rates are used as a way to measure the demand of that asset class in that location. So what that means is if a lot of people want to buy them, they're going to get a lower return on their money because they're competing with everyone else. And the more you spend on it, the lower your return is going to be. That makes sense, right? So the lower a cap rate is, what that symbolizes is a lot of people want this asset class right now. The higher a cap rate goes, the less people want to own it. And that's confusing because in our minds as the buyer, what we think is the higher the cap rate, the better. But it's not. The higher the cap rate, the less people want it. And so they have to entice you into buying it by offering you a better return. Does that make sense so far? Now let's talk about what would make somebody want to buy that asset class. Well, first off, if the interest rate's lower, do you think people want it more or people want it less? I'll let you answer that. What do you think?
Say that again.
He wasn't listening. He was thinking of his next question.
I was thinking of the next
Somebody
question.
in the front row said it correctly. I know Brandon too well. It means that you want it more.
No. What did he just ask me?
That's how I used to feel when you gave me the quick tip thing. If interest rates go down, more people want to buy these apartment complexes, and so the cap rates get compressed or they go lower. If more money is printed, you have more people that need a place to put that money. They're all competing over these assets. There's more money chasing after the same assets. Competition goes up. Cap rates have to go down. Well, we printed a whole bunch of money. We've had interest rates that kept going lower and lower. and I didn't mention this part, we've had crazy tax benefits for people that do cost segregation studies, and commercial properties are one of the easiest ways to do that, okay? So wealthy people had like the wind at their back in every single way it could possibly be, and it pushed cap rates lower and lower and lower. So people that own these asset classes made crazy amounts of money because as the cap rates go low, the price you sell it for goes up. They work inversely. That makes sense because the more people that want it and the lower the cap rate is, the more that you can sell it for. Well, what do you think happened when interest rates went from 3% to 9% on these assets? Less people want them. So the price comes down more and more and more, which means the cap rates start to go up. You get the value of these assets by taking the profit that it makes, called the net operating income or the NOI, and dividing it by the cap rate. Well, the lower the cap rates go, the more you're dividing it by, which means the higher the price is going to be. When cap rates are going bigger now, the value of these assets are going down. And that's why I'm saying it's this really big swing with commercial. You got crushed if you bought it at a 4 cap and it went to an 8 cap. Even if you did an amazing job managing it and you built up the cash flow, you couldn't sell it to anybody. And conversely, if you bought it at an 8 cap and it went to a 4, you look brilliant, like you did a lot of good work, but you really didn't. So your question was, how do you buy commercial today, right? You've got to be able to buy it not knowing where cap rates are going and hold it long enough for them to go down again. Yeah. Which means you have to put more money down because that lowers your risk so that you can hold it for a longer period of time.
That was great, wasn't it? That was really good.
You guys didn't even fall asleep. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. So then we say, okay, there's a few things you could do in that. And this regards actually all real estate, right? Like you said, you could put more down, or you could make the deal happen better. Like let's say you buy a 12-unit office building, and you're like, well, maybe office is a bad example, 12-unit retail, but you can turn it into 15 units. All of a sudden now you have more cash flow, more NOI, and if you get good loans, and actually we should really stress that, when over a long enough time horizon, it's really hard to lose in real estate, right? We all agree? Like if you could hold a property for 30 years.
And have the same interest rate the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to lose, right? Really hard. The risk is in bad loans. And so in anything that I do today, the first consideration that I make is what's the debt I'm getting and how secure is that?
What you're getting at here is that when you buy a residential property, you get the same interest rate for 30 years. Yep. When you buy a commercial property, you get the same interest rate for 3 years. Yeah,
3, 4,
5 years, right? So you have to refinance it. And the danger is that you bought it, you increased the NOI by 30%. You did an amazing job. You crushed it. But then the interest rate went from 3% to 7% at the same time your loan came due. Yep. And it's like you're playing musical chairs. You don't control when the music stops. And if it happens to stop at the time there's no chair, it does not matter what you did, you get screwed. That's what makes it hard to own commercial assets for a long period of time.
Which, if you have a huge financial backing, again, how do you buy commercial real estate? You have a lot of money. That helps a lot because, in those cases, like for example, this is happening to us. It's happening to almost every syndicator out there, every apartment building owner, is we bought them at a 5 cap, let's just say. But all of a sudden cap rates went up to 6 or even 7, and all of a sudden the value of our properties dropped. Well, so now I can't refinance it. I can't sell it. That's a problem, right?
But it's cash flowing. That's what's
it's
crazy.
Cash flowing.
You didn't make an irresponsible purchase.
We
ran it well. Yep. You added units to it.
Correct.
It's performing better than it was before, but the bank is saying, well, you got to refinance your loan. Yep. And you're like, well, my loan was at 3%. It doesn't debt service at 9%.
Yeah.
I better sell it. Well, who's going to buy it? Because it's worth a third of what it was worth because the cap rates have expanded.
And so the saving grace, what we did, and a lot of syndicators are going to be fine, and a lot of apartments we'll be fine because we're only doing 50% leverage, 55% leverage sometimes. We have so much room, and we did that knowing, hey, the market could crash. And so we want to make sure if the market goes from, if I would have got those loans at 80%, which they were offering, and then all of a sudden the market, my property value dropped 20%, which could happen. All of a sudden, then I'd be in a really, really hard spot.
Yeah.
But if it's at let's say it's at whatever, it goes from 100 down to 80, it loses 20% of its value. Well, my loan is still only at 60 or even 50. So I have room to refinance if I have to. And so that's the saving grace. And so the people that are in trouble right now, and you're going to start hearing about them more and more and more. Ken McElroy talked about that this weekend. People in trouble with multifamily and with office and commercial and the big tidal wave that you might be hearing about. That's what we're talking about. That's what's coming is people that were at 80% and their value of their property dropped 20, and now they They're just going to lose it. We're going to see a lot of foreclosures in the commercial real estate world, which is opportunity for us as investors. Now we can get in there and hopefully buy some deals.
Can I get anyone to, by a show of hands, say if you didn't understand commercial real estate and now you have a much better understanding of it, you don't feel as insecure? We got
You guys feel better?
one in the back. What else? Anybody else? Look at this.
Yeah,
That alone was worth the cost of admission, right? The next time people are talking about cap rates when they're describing a triplex, you can judge them. You have my permission.
All right, let me shift back to another how, completely outside of real estate, but something really popular with people today. There's even a panel on it today. What about buying a business, or starting a business or buying a business? How do you make that work today?
I think that's where the opportunity is because other people don't want to do it. I mean, I think the appeal of real estate to so many people was passive income. It was like free money. Just go do some work and then you're done. You don't have to work anymore and the money keeps on coming in. And in today's market, that's not happening in real estate. You're going to do work, right? But is the work you're going to do in real estate going to make you as much money from the cash flow of the asset as that same work might make you if you were just running a business? Right? There's also some synergistic components of being a real estate investor and being in a real estate related business where the two of them help each other. Kind of like we were talking about with the dream team. When you're trying to put together your team or you're trying to put together your financial picture, there are definitely things that complement each other more than others.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about that pyramid, right? Like the strong base of cash flow, and you kind of alluded to it, but that strong base could be a good business. I love in that panel on the making money outside real estate to support your real estate, Travis Hansen. Is Travis still in here? I don't know if he's still in here. He's awesome. You guys should definitely know Travis Hansen. But Travis just bought a spray foam, like insulation in the walls, spray foam company. That thing, once he gets that up and running, first of all, he saw where the puck is going, so he's skating to where the puck is going. He buys this company. He does it the right way. He's not going to be out there spraying the walls. Like, he's buying a company. He's buying a business, not a job for himself. That thing's going to spit off significant cash flow. So to go back to your monopoly strategy, he's going to take that cash flow, I'm sure, because I know Travis, and he's going to dump it into big cash flowing assets. And then he's going to make that money, he's going to buy the hotels with it.
Right.
The right hotels, and he's going to do it over and over. So, yeah, buying a business could work, but how do you make it work today? I would say, and you and I have talked a lot about this, you've all heard that thing that 90% of businesses fail, right? I would say 90% of business owners suck. Like, they're just really bad. They don't know what's going on in their business. They don't take ownership of anything. They don't have any sort of system like EOS or whatever to run their business. They're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And so I think that stat is highly misleading. If you were to say what percentage of I think they say 90% of franchises succeed. Why would 90% of franchises succeed when 90% of businesses fail? They have systems and processes. A franchise does. So in other words, how do you buy or build a business today? You become a machine. Like, you build a machine. You don't build a business. You don't just start some hobby. You're like, I like baking pies. I'm going to make a bakery. You build a machine, and what I always teach is you build it from the outside looking in if you can. Like, you build this machine over here, but you're not part of the machine, because then you don't have to pull yourself out. Right? If you build the machine and you're not part of it, then you don't have to worry about trying to elevate over the next 10 years to get yourself out of a business. You were never in it to begin with. So that's how I would do it in today's market, as I would say, that looks like an opportunity. There's where the puck is going. I'm going to be a systems person, and that's where EOS comes in really handy, that book Traction from Gino Wickman. It's just like, well, here's how you run a business. There's other ones too. It's just that's the one we use. Now, all of a sudden, most businesses actually, they're the same. Like, if you're good at business, you could open up an ice cream shop and you could open up a mortgage company. It's just business. Yes, there's nuances you got to learn, but get good at business and be really effective and efficient at it. You're going to be fine in any market.
The thing that's tricky about getting fit is you have to fight with yourself and your comfort level. You can't eat what you want. The harder you work out, the better your results are going to be. You're entering into a form of a battle with yourself, right? When you get into business, you're entering into a form of a battle with yourself. It exposes your comfort zone and what your weaknesses are. And if you want the business to do well, your flesh or your comfort zone is going to have to die. And that is simultaneously beautiful and frustrating, because that's life. Right? You will always be vulnerable to the person that sells you that they can give you a business that is easy. Do you remember the 90s when we would watch all of these infomercials for the ab roller and the thigh master and the butt cruncher? or like, right? And it was always like, from the comfort of your own home with such an enjoyable experience, you too can look as happy as this really fit blonde lady who's smiling as she crunches, right? Like, you can love every moment of your workout and look like this. And nobody was very fit in the 90s. And then CrossFit came out. And they were all ripped savages. And it was so hard that they had to create a cult to keep you to keep going. Because nobody wanted to do it. They're like, look, we're going to have to brainwash people to get them to keep coming into this thing. And that's why the CrossFit people keep walking around like Spartans, letting you know that they're in the Spartan army before you're even asking. What was your joke about how do you know if somebody's
How do you know somebody's in CrossFit? It's not my joke, but yeah, they'll tell you.
They'll tell you,
yeah.
Right?
That's like, how do you know somebody's a vegan? They'll tell you.
Yeah, well, being a vegan's freaking hard. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get to eat what you
I make
want.
fun of it, but actually, like, yeah, if you do the hard work, you should be proud of it. Tell people.
Yeah. So if you're going to get results, you're going to have to do something that a part of you is not going to like. And you can either resist that, and you will always be vulnerable to being sold on someone's course or someone's program or some commercial or something that will take your money because they sold you on why our thing is easy and successful. Or you can accept that this is the way the world works. The pattern of the world is that success follows things that are hard. The people that are getting deals right now are getting the deals other people are avoiding, or they're doing the work that other people don't want to do. And they're the ones that are becoming wealthy. And if you make peace with it, the frustration goes away.
Yeah, that's good, man. I want to, climb on top of that a little bit more and say, you know, what we do in the Better Life Tribe. How many of you guys are tribe members? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, a lot of you are. So I'm speaking to you guys just for a second here. In the tribe, there are a lot of things that you can do, right? There's Financial Freedom Hour every Thursday where I'm teaching an hour-long class, right? You can come to that, and a lot of you do. We get 100 to 200 people every week. There is the pods. You jump in a pod, and you meet with 5, 6, 7 other people. You do that. It's awesome, right? For those who's in a great pod, like just, you love your pod, great. If you're in a great pod, it's amazing. If you're in a rough pod, it's not so amazing, right? Just like a marriage, right? So you got to work to make your pod great. I mean, then there's the live events like this. Some of you come to things like this. There's the goal, you know, like setting goals every year, every quarter, setting your habits for the week, and then remembering every morning to track them. Let me get another show of hands real quick. Who feels like they're really good at the tracking your habits every day? Yeah, some of you, a lot less, right? And that's okay. It's hard to get into that. And so here's where I'm going with this, and I'm trying to tie it with what David just said. The system that we built at Better Life, it might look easy on the outside. It's like, oh, they're just like checking some boxes on a habit tracker. Oh, you set goals once a quarter. Hey, you just got to talk to some people, your friends, for an hour a week or half hour a week. What's easy to do is easy not to do. And so funny you use CrossFit as an example, because early on in the Better Life Tribe, I told people, I'm like, I want this to be like CrossFit of personal development, the CrossFit of real estate investing success. It's like, it's not hard to just show up at the gym every morning, but it is hard to show up at the gym every morning. It's very hard to show up at the gym every morning. And so everything against us, remember the Akrasia effect I talked about in my keynote? Like even though we know it's good for us, we still don't do it. And so I guess what I just want to encourage you tribe members in there is don't get overwhelmed thinking you have to do every single thing, but stick with it. Do the work. Yes, it's hard. Once you understand that it is hard, it's hard to stick with it, but you're going to do it anyway, then you're going to win. I mean, think about it. If you had a vision for your real estate investing, you know, 5 years from now, you wanted to have a balanced portfolio. What's the word you used? The
portfolio architecture.
Yeah, you've architected a beautiful portfolio that's bringing you $10,000 a month in passive income, completely passive. That's 5 years from now. And then you had a goal this year for that. You said, this year I'm going to do this. And I'm going to buy my first property or my third property, whatever that is. I'm going to buy 5 this year. I talked to a woman, she's in here somewhere, I'm sure, who said her goal originally was to buy 1 property. Then she came to the event in Vegas and I was encouraging people to up their goals. And so she's like, I'm going to buy 6. And here we are, like not even halfway through the year, and she's already on her 4th, or she's just closed her 4th. So it's like, if you have, okay, this year I'm going to buy 4 or 6, whatever. And then this quarter, I'm going to make an offer. I'm going to make 12 offers. And then if we do that, if we make 12 offers, you know, what do I got to do this week? Well, I got to analyze 10 deals. I'm going to go out and make 1 offer this week. And if you actually do that because you went to your accountability pod and they were like, hey, you said you were going to do that or else you're going to wear a dress to dinner. You're like, you're right. So then you actually do it. So let me put all that together. You actually do the action, every single week that lines up to the and you track it. And then that lines up to the quarterly goal. Therefore, you hit the quarterly goal. The quarterly goal, you nail the annual goal because of that. And then the annual goal, you keep doing that year after year, you nail the 5-year vision. Does that work? Yes or no? Yes, then why don't we do it? Because what's easy to do is easy not to do. So I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I fall off track. My wife falls off track. We all fall off track. David falls off track. I just want to encourage you all to just stick with it. That's why we're shifting the tribe in the future. We were like, if you're going to join the tribe in the future, you're only joining on a 12-month commitment. I don't want any more of the, hey, I'm gonna join the tribe at monthly, and then a month in, you're like, I'm kind of out. Y'all lost my motivation. Like, your life doesn't change overnight. So my encouragement to everybody here is, if you want to improve your life, if you want to be better, you've got to stick with it. It's not overly time consuming. You don't have to go to every financial freedom hour. Your pod doesn't have to meet weekly. Maybe you decide, hey, I want to do a once a month pod. That's fine. I don't care. Do what works for you, but make sure you're doing the stuff that we know works. Amen? All right. Thank you, everybody. You guys are awesome. I'm going to kick David off, and then I'll do some closing remarks. Let's give David a round of applause. David Greene. All right, you can sit down again. All right, so just wanted to say just a final thank you to everybody for coming this weekend. This has been a dream come true for me. I love this group. I love this tribe. I love the work that we're putting in together to live better lives. I love the marriages that are being transformed. I love the weight that's being lost or put on, whatever you want. I love the intentionality around all areas of your life, and I love the wealth being built. I asked this question on the first day, or kind of that pre-day with the tribe members, but I'm going to ask it again real quick. In the last 12 months, how many of you have bought a real estate deal? Raise your hand real quick. Isn't that amazing? Like, people are like, you can't find deals today. Over half this group has bought deals. Probably 3/4 of this group have bought deals. You can buy deals. So don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Make yourself better. And the way you do that is the system that we've laid out here. So those who are tribe members, like I said, stick with it. I mean, we're talking $3,000 a year. So if you are not a tribe member and you are still on the fence about it, I just want to do one last encouragement. If all you did was showed up to Financial Freedom Hour, you didn't even do the goals, you had no pod. If all you did was Financial Freedom Hour, learning from me and other just black belt real estate investors, would you get back $3,000 in value over a whole year of that? Yes. If you had an incredible pod, and pods can be difficult to get into, you got to find the right one, and some people leave, and you got to work it. You got to get through the dip, right, of the pod. But if you had an amazing pod holding you accountable to your higher self, to your future self, to your better self, is that worth $3,000 a year? Yes. Right? If you set these big goals and you actually worked on your habits that lined up to your quarterly goals, that lined up to your annual goals, that lined up to your vision, is that worth it? Yes. It all works. So do not get overwhelmed. Don't feel like you're missing out because you didn't get to every Financial Freedom Hour. But I want to encourage those who are in the tribe, stick with it. Those who are not in the tribe, join the tribe. And the last thing I'll say is this, remember, most of you know this, but I'm going to say it over and over. 100% of our profits go directly to charity. They go to the fight against human trafficking. So last year we gave $500,000 roughly to the Tim Tebow Foundation. This year I hope we can do more than that. But the way we do that is by people staying in the tribe and by people telling their friends and by people joining. And so we're going to keep pioneering that. I don't even take a salary from this. I hope y'all, I don't take a salary from the tribe. I want to make every one of you wealthy enough that you can start your own charity-driven business someday and we can just drive this forward. I want the ripple effect to be huge. So let me help you become wealthy, become attractive, to whatever that means to you, to improve your marriage, to improve your parenting, and to be a better person all around, to deepen your walk with God, to have more fun, to have more excitement. That's all possible when you live an intentional life. So thank you, everybody. You guys are awesome. Have a great night and a great year.
And that, my people, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the insights from the episode. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or you enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback and we read your comments to make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people the more reviews we have. And last but not least, please head over to social media and consider friending, following, subscribing, and all that stuff to to both Better Life at Better Life over on Instagram and my own personal at Beardy Brandon for more. That's Beardy with a Y at the end of it, Beard with a Y, Brandon on YouTube, Instagram, everywhere else. Thanks again for listening. I am honored that you would bring me along on your journey to building wealth without losing your soul. This show has been a production of the Better Life Tribe, copyright 2024. Our producer is Kevin Leahy with Podcast Point Man. Our videographer and all-around talented video guy, Carson Smith. My co-host is the amazing Cam Cathcart with DealFlowRealEstate.com. And finally, this show has been all about living a better life. But if you want my spiritual answer to what it takes to live not only a better life, but the best life, head over to abetterlife.com/best life. I got a 13-minute special video for you there. For the Better Life Tribe, my name is Brandon Turner, signing off.